Hello and welcome again to Another Accent. That's our program where you can meet people really from all over the world who have made the Caribbean their home. My name is Gabriela Mönich, and today, can you believe it, after 4.5 years and over 60 episodes, we finally have a guest with a true French accent. Agnès Jordan, welcome to Another Accent.
Thank you very much and welcome home. Bienvenue.
Oh, bienvenue, thank you. Agnès, yes. We have had guests from Haiti and Luxembourg on the show, and they had a somewhat French accent. But you are indeed our first guest on the show from France. Where
Really?
exactly are you from?
Well, I'm born in France, it's true, and actually I'm born in Paris, in south of Paris, in 1972. But my parents were also born in France. My grandparents now were born in Poland, so we arrived in France just before the Second World War, hiding from the escalating Nazi, and they came and hid in south of France, went through some tribulation in concentration camp, and finally made it through the free zone in France and hid until the end of the war.
Which means your family and yourself, you're Jewish people, and we are going to talk about that a little bit more a little later.
That's correct. That's why I'm in France, really. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, Paris, the city of cities, an amazing place. I have been there quite a few times. A lot of interesting tourist sites, people from all different cultural backgrounds, and of course the unique atmosphere in the coffee shops. Tell us about growing up in Paris.
I love growing up in Paris. It is still such an interesting city, so many places to see. Just walking in the street of Paris and looking at the building is just amazing, looking at the people, looking at the fashion. It's just very, very, very nice town to live in, and it gives me so much exposure to art and museum and to also a lot of different people from all over the world. So
let's play tourist for a minute. I mean, we were privileged to have been there. A lot of our viewers have not. What would be some of the typical things that Paris stands for?
No city, I don't think, in the world can beat Paris. Maybe Italy in terms of architecture. The museum, from the Louvre to Beaubourg, with a lot of street entertainment as well.
Tour Eiffel.
La Tour Eiffel, bien sûr, bien sûr, bien
the
sûr.
Eiffel Tower.
The Eiffel Tower as well, the Bateau Mouche, the Seine. So many beautiful places in Paris.
And the beautiful large Champs-Élysées.
Yes, the Champs-Élysées as well, it is true that you tend to forget when you're from Paris about all those beautiful places, but it is what makes Paris very unique and one place in the world I think that people need to see.
And I hope I'm allowed to say this. I do know that your childhood wasn't the easiest one, but you did have a chance to travel and see your country and the diversity of scenery in other parts of France as well, huh?
I would not say my childhood was not an easy one, because there's some people that are much less fortunate than I was, but truly my mother died when I was young, so it was a challenge for not only for me, for my sister and for my father in particular, that still love her very, very much, but he also made me the person that I am today, and he also teach me that for every problem that you face in life, you always can find a solution, and you need to deal with it and move on. So the fact that my mother was there for the early age of my childhood still give me the strength, and truly, you know, we were very privileged being able to travel in different places in France and going skiing, going to Normandy, going to Greece. I had some traveler parents as well, so I was very lucky in the sense that they were trying to expose us me and my sister to different places in France as well, because the diversity in France is incredible too. You've got big lake, you've got mountain, you've got town, and what I've got to say about France, I've got to mention is the food. Everywhere you're going, it's a different food as well, and different wine, different culture altogether. You've got so many different culture in France. So.
Well, in the course of this program, Agnès, we are going to find out you had a really interesting life so far already.
Okay,
a lot
thanks.
of people might have seen your face, but they don't know your story. And one thing that goes like a red thread through your whole life is your fascination for Black culture. Isn't that so?
I think I was fascinated with minorities. I was not. I think that because I was belonging to a minority, I never felt that much different from a typical French person as well. So I think from a young age, I was always trying to fight for injustice. So I will say more about. I was interested in all different culture, Black culture as well, and North Africa and Indian culture, and everybody that's suffering. And I think that from a young age I try to position myself to defend the minority, and if you don't want to be part of the injustice, you need to say it loud, and I think that I always said it out. So yes, there is lots of injustice in the world, and I was trying to fight against them and trying to do my little bit.
We will hear a lot more about the fascinating life of Agnès Jordan, so we'll be right back. Welcome back to Another Accent. We are today in the home of Agnès Jordan, and she is from Paris, a fascinating city. And I know you have had a lot of interest throughout your life already, but two things were always with you: your interest in sports and in music. Let's start with sports.
It's true that after school there was one day that I was not involved in sport activities. So from gymnastics, I did swimming, I did fencing, basketball, volleyball, handball, and truly I've got, and I still have, I think, a competitive spirit, and I think that the sport helped me to just further this competitive spirit. And I was not a winner all the time. Actually, I didn't really like losing neither. But I think that it just helped me, and it gives you a discipline as well, which I think you can apply in life all the time. So the team spirit and the discipline, and try to keep fit as well, which I've lost a bit, I'm afraid.
Don't say that. You mentioned earlier you are Jewish.
Yes.
And I know that the dream of most of the Jews is to go to Israel at least once in their life. You were able to realize that dream fairly early while you were still going to school at age 16.
Yeah.
You went to Israel and worked in a kibbutz for a while.
Correct. I'd been to Israel with my uncle a time before that, and then I'd met someone that was from my family, a very, very old person in my family, and he was living in a kibbutz. So I just asked if I could come and work in the kibbutz. So they said, yeah, no problem, just come, and there's a program for that. So at 16, I just take my friend and I say, all right, we are going to the kibbutz and we are going to work together in the kibbutz. And it is true that it was an amazing experience.
Tell us in a few words, if that is possible for you, the principle of a kibbutz.
Okay, a kibbutz is a place where there's, first and foremost, there's no notion of money. So everybody has a responsibility and everybody is useful. From a young person to old person, everybody's got something to do and is rewarded for what they're doing with being provided a roof and food. In this kibbutz, all the children were sleeping together, and then there was some rotation with the parents in terms of looking after the children. It's basically socialism. It's basically the example of socialism. Now, to see if it's working nowadays, it's a little bit sad to say that there's not that many kibbutz left in Israel because capitalism are really taken over all over the world. But it was a beautiful experience, and all the comfort was there. And we worked hard, but we embraced working then.
Well, I would like to share with you that I actually have that experience as well. I'm very fortunate, I'm not Jewish, but in 1975 I went to Israel, worked in a kibbutz, and I said exactly when I came back what you just said. It's the only place on earth that shows us how communism or socialism can be realized and lived, right? Wonderful. And then after that, you went to university. We actually decided to study similar things, communication with emphasis on radio. Tell us about your time at the university in Paris.
My university was a very different university. First and foremost, it was extremely multicultural. So time for Ramadan, for example, was real festivities in our university. And we were speaking and we were learning English, for example, with famous hip-hop precursors, the Last Poet. They are older, the first people starting doing poetry over some hip-hop rhythm. We had KRS-One coming and do speeches at the university. Spike Lee came as well. So it was very innovative way of learning and very nice because communication need to be on the edge of the time. You cannot have the old rules of directing the operation. It's got to be always an evolution. And I think this university was as such. It was a fantastic experience and I met some beautiful people, very interesting people and some wonderful teachers.
Wow, a real privilege to go to a school like that, to university. And I understand one of the many assignments for university put you in contact with Radio France International, yes, a large radio station based in Paris, and you ended up working for them in a capacity for a very interesting radio show. I would like you to tell us about that, please.
Yes. My teacher in communication in the radio had seen that I had an interest with music, and he was working himself at Radio France International, and there was a young program called Boulevard Sound System that was mainly based on reggae music and hip-hop, which was my music. So he said to me that maybe you could try and work there, and I had an assignment at university. I had to produce a show that needed to be broadcasted on air. So that was a mission that I had to do, and actually went to Malik, who was a DJ of Boulevard Sound System at the time, and just proposed him that I will be helping him producing and behind the scene, because I was not really interested in being a presenter. I was more interested into the copyright issue, about artist management and producing the show than presenting the show. And we really clicked straight away. I think my approach to the program as well make it a little bit more corporate, and I think that he actually didn't want to let me go afterwards, so I keep on working there.
And I heard it was really at the time one of the most popular radio shows even in Africa, because it was broadcast all over there as well, right?
Most of our audience was in Africa, and it was actually indeed the most popular show in Africa at this time on Radio France International, because it was young, it was new, and we were speaking about the new music, and there was this time where it was needed. So
fantastic. So much to talk about. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Another Accent. We're still here in the home of Agnès Jordan from Paris. Agnès, I think it was in 1993, the government in France changed. As a consequence, your fantastic radio show was scrapped, and for you it was time to move on, and you just decided to leave France altogether. Where did you go?
I was hesitating between going to New York and London, because I already had decided that I wanted to be involved in the music business. But I was a little bit frightened to go so far, and for legal purpose as well. England was Europe, so we could go to England. So I just took my bag and decided that I'm going to London, and I did. So I arrived in London, and I find it's so musical, London, that was a town for me. And my friends were living in an apartment that they had squatted. At the time, squatting was legal, so they had just opened an apartment that was unoccupied, and we were allowed to do so. So they had invited me to come and just settle down, and they said, come down, and I just said yes. I like it, and I just did and follow and did all sorts of classes learning English, from Indian cookery to sign language, black history, and a lot of classes, because there was so much knowledge available, and I was there to learn. So the first 6 months of my life in London was going back to school and learning what I didn't know nothing about.
Wow, fantastic. But you weren't just going to school, I think you had to work on the side as well,
yes,
to maintain yourself, huh?
Yes, I had to definitely work, and my English was not very good at the time, so the only work that I could find was working in a cloakroom in nightclub. I could count number easily. So that was not, and there was not too much problem and explanation to do. So number one ticket, I could handle that. And it took me about 6 months to be able to be more fluent in my English and be feeling more comfortable. The first 6 months I was tired at 8 o'clock at night and I could not understand, but learning a different language and be immersed into a different language was quite tiring at first, but a challenge nice.
And you were saying, as we all know, London is full of music, full of culture. You were diving into a totally different culture, and your interest for music, of course, that was the place to be. Your interest grew and grew, and your knowledge grew, and you ended up actually managing a rather popular female DJ.
Yes, I mean, before that I was working with a lot of different entertainment companies without being paid, so that's what I was working in nightclub in the evening, in the night, and then in the morning I was doing freelancing to learn about the music business. And further down the line, a few years later, I started being more comfortable and having more knowledge. And yes, I took on the task to manage a fantastic artist, producer, DJ, Emma Feline, and we gained a show on radio with Choice FM, which was a leading urban radio station. And Emma Feline was one of the most popular female DJ at the time, and we traveled in various places, from going to America, even going to India for New Year's Eve gig. So it was amazing to be able to keep working and traveling and discovering new places in the world as well. So I was very blessed once again.
Tell us a little bit about your time in India. I mean, I imagine that's pretty unique.
Definitely. As soon as we arrived at the airport, we felt the difference of culture straight away. People doing fire in the car park and trying to keep from the cold, and I think it's a beautiful place, different culture and beautiful traditions as well.
But while you were still based in London, I know that your journalistic background came in very handy, because you ended up being the news editor of a music magazine.
Yes, correct. It was a very nice concept, this music magazine, because we were all a bunch of young people, all under 25 or 30 years old maximum, and we just were working all very, very hard. We were not making that much money at all, but we produced a #1 urban magazine that was distributed free in nightclub and so on. We were living from advertising. And
what was it called?
It was called SAS at first, and then Rewind Magazine. And actually, just before I left to move to Barbados, it got elected for the best young businesses of the year. So I was very proud to be part of that team, and all the members are still working very, very hard at it, and it's still doing very good.
Agnès Jordan, a very versatile young lady. You didn't know that, huh? And don't you just love her French accent? We'll be back. Welcome back to Another Accent. Our guest today is Agnès Jordan, who comes from Paris, the city of love and romance. But Agnès, that wasn't really so much your topic. You were interested in sports and music.
Lucky,
We heard about your time in London. You were very involved with the SAS magazine.